It's boating season on Osoyoos Lake. But with thousands of recreational boats moving around BC, there may be some very unwelcome hitchhikers. Today we're looking at a provincial program launched in April and aimed at keeping zebra and quagga mussels out of our province. Those mussels have done billions of dollars in damage to waterways around North America. If they got established here, their impact on tourism and local infrastructure would be devastating. The province held a news event in Osoyoos on Tuesday to talk about the program.
The threat of invasive species in British Columbia has diminished due to the fact that the mussels inspection team have set up border check stations, 5 permanent stations that operate 10 hours a day, all hours of the day, and they are put there strategically to prevent mussels from coming into the province of British Columbia in cooperation with our 5 allegiance, which is Washington State, Montana, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. We are the last line of defense to prevent mussels from coming into the province of British Columbia.
This topic has a really important message, especially in a busy boating place like Osoyoos. I want to thank you, the mussel inspectors, for your work on keeping quagga and zebra mussels out of our freshwater lakes and rivers. These invasive hitchhikers pose a threat to more than just BC's ecosystems. They can also impact drinking water, hydro stations, and agricultural irrigation. The economic impact of these little mussels to hydropower, agriculture, municipal water supplies, and recreation boating could be as much as $43 million a year.
The inspections in stations in April of this year went to 8 permanent stations along the border of British Columbia, and there are now 32 highly trained mussel inspectors that operate in these spots. Earlier this year, British Columbia signed a Western Canadian invasive species agreement with our partners, Alberta, Yukon, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and are currently in negotiations with the international mussels defense program, including Montana, Idaho, and Washington, Oregon.
Being on the front line of the fight against quagga and zebra mussels, I have seen what these tiny mussels can do to watercraft. Invasive mussels can easily attach themselves to boat hulls, trailers, motors, equipment, vegetation, and other organisms. And they can survive for several weeks without being immersed in water if they are left in cold and moist environments. Mussels can attach to boats and equipment and be transferred from one body of water to another. And when they are introduced into new bodies of water and complex ecosystems, they can multiply rapidly and extremely difficult to eradicate once they become established in an ecosystem.
And in conclusion, I'd like to recognize the 32 officers that currently work for the Ministry of Environment. It's on the front lines. They are out there in extreme weathers, dealing with tourists and people hauling boats into the province that have been in long lineups of traffic, and we ask continuously for their cooperation, and we are working collectively together, the Conservation Officer Service and the Mussel Defense Program, in order to stop the invasive species from coming in.
So the first thing we ask a boater when they come to the border, we want to know where they've been in the last 30 days. That's right. Our period in which we're confident the mussel won't be alive. Right. And how long they have been out of the waters.
Okay.
So from those 2 questions, we have a decision matrix that we work off of. So if it's high risk and there are mussels attached or there's standing water, that's instantly a decontamination.
Right.
And then we'll also give a quarantine if that 30-day period isn't sufficed.
Right.
From that. Other cases, they're coming from Washington, which is a non-contaminated state.
Okay.
There's no water, there's no mussels, so it's good to go. So we pass on the information that we want everyone to clean, drain, and dry their boats.
Right.
It's just to reduce the spread of the mussel.
So do you have a little card or something you hand people?
Yeah,
that
we have pamphlets we give out.
Yeah.
We also have like keychains and promotional stuff with our number on it, so they know who to get a hold of.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess, do you want to show how we sort of
Where would you find the mussels?
Inspect one of the watercraft?
By far, from my experience, the most common areas you find them would be on the leg of the engine.
So they're underneath it?
Yeah.
Is that kind of where they would...
They can even go into the intakes, which is a
really?
huge
Into
problem.
those little holes
Yeah.
there? And
It's,
how on earth do you got to take this off to find that?
A lot of the times you can like shine a flashlight in there and you'll see some attached.
Okay. Because otherwise you got to take off the propeller here, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, we'd have to run hot water through the system.
Right.
make sure everything's cooked, and
Yeah.
then move on from there.
And that's the only cure right now, is to cook them.
There are chemical treatments, but for our purpose, hot water is...
Yeah, because the chemicals also have side effects to wherever they might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the leg of the engine, all the areas where it's hidden from direct water pressure are more common, and then the transom of the boat.
Right.
This one doesn't have it, but those cavitation plates.
Right.
The
that's
top
it.
of those are a really big spot for them.
It's just places they can cling to, hey?
And then another big issue is a lot of boaters will say that we only went in the lake for a day. Like, how can the mussel attach? But another huge issue is their larva could be inside of any standing water.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can also be part of doing the inspection is also looking at the equipment. So it can be the ropes, anything that comes in
Depth
contact
finders.
with yeah, so anything
You know.
that comes in contact with the water. So it can be looking here at this fender. If it's been sitting in the
Right.
water for a long period of time, you could have mussels attached onto here. So it's not just looking at the exterior of the boat, but also looking inside the compartments where they might be storing any water equipment. So life jackets could also be something.
Water skis.
Exactly. So it's just being aware of anything that you're using. So in the water, so water equipment, wakeboards, anything like that can also pose a risk if they've been in contact with the water.
We interviewed Barb Leslie, an aquatic invasive species inspector with the program.
Okay, and tell me how the inspection program works in the Osoyoos area.
So I'll tell you how it works provincially,
Yes.
because many of your people are traveling throughout the province. So this year we've partnered, the provincial government has also partnered with the power producers and the Columbia Basin Trust Fund, and we have 8 inspection stations throughout the province, going from Dawson Creek, Valemont, Golden, Invermere, Cranbrook, the Nelson, the Okanagan, and the Lower Mainland. Those are mobile stations. We operate out of our trucks with power wash units, and we've also partnered with the Ministry of Transportation and Highways and Transportation Infrastructure that we are now have signage that when we're working, all watercraft must report to our stations for an inspection. Any of the boats that have been in infested provinces and or states within the last 30 days will be decontaminated and or quarantined before they're allowed to go into BC waters.
Okay, and I understand it's a little bit different in Osoyoos because you work with the border officials.
So because of the various numbers of border crossings between the US and BC, Canada and the BC, we do have 3 stations in those areas. We're very fortunate in this area that we're partnered with the Canada Border Services Agency, and we're working very closely with them to detect high-risk boats and also collect information on where the boating public are coming from as they enter through the Osoyoos border crossing on those.
Okay, and what's the process if you encounter a boat that you believe may have mussels?
So for us, we have a couple of options that we can do. One is, depending on how complex the boat is, if it's a fairly simple boat, we will decontaminate the boat with hot water, and we'll also flush all the engines, etc., with the hot water. That will kill the mussels. Or we will end up utilizing a quarantine. The adult mussels can survive out of water for up to 30 days, which is the reason why it's so important for us to have clean, drain, dry boats in this province. You know, if you're taking a boat out, you need to pull the plugs, empty all the water out of the boat, empty your bait buckets, dry out the material, take all the weeds off, so that there is no moisture left on that boat, that if you've been in infested waters, that mussels will be there. We want clean, drain, dry boats going from one lake to another lake, so you're also not moving any of the other invasive species such as milfoil from one lake to another.
The new program is a big step forward from what was done previously, but some, like the Okanagan Basin Water Board, would still like to see it expanded. It would only take one infected boat getting through to do irreparable damage to our lakes. This is Richard McGuire, Digital Editor with Aberdeen Publishing.